I didn't know it at the time, but something was waking up in me long before I had words for it, words to describe it. It started quietly, a sense that something was missing, something that the world could not give me. That certain spaces, although they were familiar, wasn't meant for me anymore. That the conversation I used to enjoy now made me feel uncomfortable. There was no dramatic moments, no lightning striking me, and this awakening happened. Just this soft, almost inconvenient truth. I was no longer comfortable pretending. That's how spiritual awakening begins for many of us. Not in clarity, but in discomfort. Not in joy, but in the quiet ache of knowing something has shifted, but you just can't put a finger on it. You just don't know what. You feel it. You know it. And over time, you start to realize that you're not breaking down, but you're breaking open. I used to care so much about being understood. I bent myself to fit what others expected of me. Praise felt like oxygen. I needed to be seen. But somewhere along the path, I stopped needing to be seen so badly. Not because I didn't care, but because I started seeing myself more clearly. I no longer needed applause to know what I was worth or what I'm worthy of. I didn't need people to agree with me. I just needed to trust my own heart. You start choosing peace over proving yourself, and that changes everything. So that was one of the things that I started realizing slowly on my spiritual awakening journey. I guess you can call it stages of spiritual awakening, the process. And then there was the letting go of the material attachment. I used to think having more meant being more, more clothes, a better car, a busier life. But spiritual awakening has a way of stripping all of that down. Suddenly, I didn't want to consume, I wanted to feel. I didn't want noise, I wanted meaning. The joy wasn't in the thing anymore, it was in the freedom of not needing it. You stop decorating your life to impress other people and simply start just being and doing what aligned with your soul. So the need for material things didn't impress me anymore like it used to. And that's one of the other things that I recognize in my spiritual awakening journey. Another thing is the surrender. You get to a point where you just have to totally surrender to it all. For a long time, I tried to micromanage my life into perfection. Every detail, every outcome, I had to control it. For some reason, I felt, do you know when you're living in fear that everything around you you have to control? Because my old self is used to surviving until life showed me what surrender really meant. Letting go didn't mean giving up. It meant allowing things to be, trusting that if something left, it was meant to, trusting that if something stayed, it had its purpose. You stop trying to push the river. You stop trying to fan the wind and start flowing with it. Not because you have no dreams, because we have dreams, but because you finally trust the timing of your own transformation, that divine timing. You surrender because you know that the universe is your guide. So surrendering, you get to a stage where there's nothing else to do but to surrender to the journey and to the process. Another thing was walking away from toxic relationship. There were people I loved who didn't love me in a way that felt safe. Friends, family, partners. It didn't matter who they were. And for a long time, I stayed anyway. Out of guilt, out of fear, out of habit, out of what felt normal, out of what felt comfortable. But awakening taught me you can love someone and still choose distance. You can forgive and still say goodbye. When your spirit grows and matures, some relationship can't grow with it. And that's not being mean or being cruel to that person. That's really clarity. And the spiritual awakening process aligns us. You walk away not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. So that was a big one for me, walking away from relationship that didn't serve me anymore. And sometimes I didn't have to walk away. Sometimes the universe will just remove people, places from my life without me having to do anything at all. Another thing was you stop compromising your authenticity, because in the spiritual awakening process, you recognize what's real and the false identity falls away. This was a big one for me. I used to edit myself down, water down myself to be more digestible to people. Yes, I used to do that. I kept part of myself quiet so I wouldn't upset people. But at some point, pretending became more painful than the risk of being real. Your true self is not a mask. You start showing up for yourself, even when it makes others uncomfortable, because betraying yourself is the worst discomfort of all. You just stop asking for permission to be who you are. You start owning it. The messy parts, the raw parts, the beautiful parts, the flawed parts of you, which only leads you right back to your wholeness. You have to accept all of that. It's that feeling of wholeness that is unapologetic. You stop compromising who you are because you're not seeking approval or validation anymore. So that was a big one. And that gave me courage to stand in my truth. And I wasn't really looking for anyone else to see me, because I finally saw myself. And the last one is it's a little heavy, but the last one is debt. You make peace with that, because it used to scare me. The finality of it, the silence. But awakening changes your relationship with endings, period. The death of the body, you realize that you are the eternal witness. You stop seeing death as something to fear and start seeing it as a transition. You realize everything in life is constantly ending and beginning. Every breath, every moment, every chapter. And somehow that makes you live more fully. It makes you say, I love you quicker. It makes you release grudges faster. It makes you savor the little things like they're the only things, if that makes sense, because they are. You become fully present when you realize that everything is just coming and going. So that was another thing for me. And that was a big one, a big one. Not being afraid of that. So if you're in one of these stages and feeling like your world is falling apart, you're confused, you're feeling lost, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're becoming. And yes, it feels messy. It's lonely. And like I said, it's confusing. But it's also the place where you become whole. So trust your pace and your process. Honor your silence. Honor yourself, your true self. And remember, you're not waking up to escape life. You're waking up to finally live it and live it fully.